What's up and welcome back to Nowstalgia Pod, giving you another week of what's going on in pop culture. My name is Pat Sheehan, joined by my trusty co-host Dave Martin Swagger. Dave, what's going on, man?
Not much, man. We here. Content mines are rolling. Lots of music.
This is the music week, and next week is the movie week. So hold on to your butts, people, because we got lots of movies to talk about and lots of music to talk about this week. But we will also touch on a show that was much anticipated for its return, as well as the first Ridley Scott movie to come out this year. Which weird to say the first, because we're getting multiple Ridley Scott movies in a year. Who knew?
He's 83.
Yeah, he's working. Give us that subscribe if you're watching on youtube.com/nostalgiapod. Go to soundcloud.com/nostalgiapod to follow the podcast any other way you'd like to, and also at nostalgiapod on Twitter. But Dave, we're gonna start with some K-pop. Aespa dropping Savage, the first mini album. And as we've been doing a lot of these K-pop albums, I feel like we're always like, yeah, this group has been around for like 10 years and has all this music, but this is our first time talking about them. That's not the case this time. It's kind of nice to be not super far behind and catching up on these artists, huh?
That's true. Yeah, Aespa, with this EP, has a whopping 9 official tracks. They debuted as a K-pop 4-piece in November 2020. To this point, they had released 3 singles, and now there's a 6-track EP on top of all that. So definitely a change of pace from, say, EXO or NCT and all its myriad subunits, of which we've talked about recently as well. Aespa, definitely different. And I think they are notable just to discuss for a number of reasons. And we're actually a little late to this album, or this EP, this mini album came out back on October 5th, so about 2 weeks ago. But I think they're important for a few reasons. One would be that they're actually the first SM girl group to debut since Red Velvet, meaning since 2014. They don't do this often, so the fact that they are confident enough in the new group to actually make them an official active musical act, I think says a lot. Probably I think a little bit of this has to do with Girls' Generation going on seemingly long hiatus, so there was a void to fill. But either way, Aespa is now here, and they've had a lot of success already. 2 of those earlier singles, Black Mamba and Next Level, have been big hits already, getting TikTok presence, and now you have this new EP. And I think like production wise, there's a little bit of a difference than what we've talked about recently with a lot of the other SM acts. A lot more synth heavy on the production here, which I think definitely stands out, right? Because when we think about like electronic production and K-pop of late, of the past like 10 years that we've been referring to, it's a lot more like house and like big bass drops and stuff. That's not quite as modern normally, right? So a bit of a change of pace.
Yeah, definitely a bit of a change of pace, but I have to say I found myself really enjoying this 6-track album, mini album. And yeah, I didn't really like the first track that much, Energy, but I thought it really picks up with Savage. That's really the first song that popped off to me, and the title track is just an absolute banger, I thought.
Yeah, totally. I mean, Savage is probably one of the more traditional songs here because it's just a contemporary K-pop banger. Room for big rap verses, a sung bridge, dance breaks, electronic production. It's all these hallmarks we've been discussing with everyone who's been dropping this year. There's always one song like this on every K-pop project, it feels like. But it's also for a reason, because it works. These are just great bangers, and I actually think they do go pretty hard with the rapping, which I obviously appreciate. They're not like half-assing it at all. And yeah, so I love Savage, the track as well. And the 4th song, Yeppy Yeppy, I also thought was really awesome. Just the bounce in that beat, like just that tempo was sick. And then on top of that, the chorus is still excellent,
Yeah, no, I completely agree. Probably the most fun track out of the 6, like just really makes you want to move, makes you want to just like get up out of your chair. Which I mean, a lot of these songs have that quality, but this one specifically, just like you mentioned, the tempo and just the energy stays up the whole time, which doesn't really happen on every track here. Something like Lucid Dream starts out a little bit more low key and stays a little bit more low key throughout. Um, even like the first track, Energy, I thought wasn't like super energetic. I thought there were points when it obviously
Mhm.
rose up, but kind of stayed more low, which I appreciate because I think sometimes these, like you mentioned, these K-pop tracks can feel cookie cutter, and especially if these groups aren't pushing themselves to be creative, the album can feel a bit samey and a bit same energy level. So I appreciate
Mhm.
them going up and down a bit on this actually.
Totally. And I think there's one other notable piece to Aespa. It's funny to like find so many like tidbits of things to latch onto for a group that again only has 9 songs out. But there's a big theme through line with their music this through this first year in terms of these like futuristic visuals and these like science fiction like narratives that are kind of following the group in their music and especially in their visuals and their music videos. And if you watch the Savage music video for the track, they're at the end they're dancing along their like virtual like AI like avatars, and apparently these virtual avatars, these counterparts, are kind of accompanying them throughout a lot of their visuals. So it's definitely I think a new thing, in terms of like the world of NFTs, the world of everything electronic, to see this carrying over into music in this fashion, like actually like
Mhm.
factoring into the creative side of things. We'll be curious to see if this continues, but I think definitely something that stood out to me just for being a little different, a little new.
Absolutely. No, I think this is a group. Like I said, I'm glad to be in somewhat on the ground floor with them. Only 9 tracks into their career, so one we can definitely track and see the whole arc ourselves live. But Dave, I think it's time to move on to the rap world a bit here, and someone that this was a album Aespa's that was 2 weeks ago. Maxo Cream just dropped today.
Yeah.
Look at us being right on top of this one. Um, and shout out Maxo, right? So he's 27, been making like dropping mixtapes since 2012. So not necessarily new to the game, but I don't believe we reviewed Brandon Banks a few years back, right? The first Rock Nation album.
No, we did actually. I don't think you
Oh, we
got to it
did.
on time, but we did listen to that one. Yes, his
So
second
Dave did.
album following his debut album Pumpkin from 2018. And actually, looking on Wikipedia, it says he's 31. So
Oh,
he not either way, he's not a new on the scene. He's not a young buck, I wouldn't say. Obviously,
right.
Houston, Texas rapper, not as famous as Travis Scott or Megan Thee Stallion, but I still think he's quite notable. And I think anyone who listens to him at this point would know that because he's got a really solid body of work through 3 albums. I think that's kind of undeniable.
Yeah, I mean, going into this and obviously not having listened to the last one, I was unsure if I was going to leave this really impressed. And I have to say, the first 2 tracks off this album, I was like, oh no, this is going to be a tough 40 minutes to get through. And then we get to They Say, and I felt like the album really picked up for me. And I was really impressed with this. I think not only did his delivery grow on me as I worked my way through, but the features he gets out of people on this and just the overall like production on the album after the first 2 tracks really worked for me. What'd you think of Weight of the World though?
Yeah, I liked it. I like Brandon Banks a lot too. Probably like Brandon Banks a little bit more. I actually had Meet Again, one of the singles off that album, in the top 10 for 2019. So obviously, I've had a high opinion of him for some time now. Uh, but I still think all those trademarks that you expect from Maxo Cream, if you're up on his music, they're still here. Like you said, his flow, it's not usually the most like a complicated flow, but I still think it's like really fun. And he obviously knows how to match it with good production in like a really effective way. Like he knows how he likes to rap. I just think it sounds good. And more importantly, he's a really engaging storyteller. And I think he actually backs it up with introspective lyrics. When we talk about like rappers from the streets, often the lyrics are more inconsistent, but I think he's always had this strength. He speaks a lot about his family. Like actually on the first track, Christian, he remarks on whether his sick grandma got COVID from him, things like that coming up. He's always kind of looked inward while still not being afraid to speak on his more illicit past, as it were. Obviously, he did do time for moving weight and all that. So all the trademarks are still here. But as you said, there are some notable features on Weight of the World. And
yeah, man,
they deliver.
I have to say, we got a lot of ASAP Rocky this weekend, and this was probably my favorite showing from him out of all the different tracks we heard him on, obviously on the Young Thug album as well, that we're going to get to. But I thought he was great on Streets Alone. I thought they played off each other really, really well.
Hell yeah. Can't wait for the next ASAP solo album, man. Really, really need that to come out from Rocky.
Yeah, but he's great on this. I thought Tyler was like he's the first feature on this and like leads a run of features, but he's just absolutely fire and maybe having like the best rap year out of anybody right now.
Yeah, honestly, that's probably the right take. Notably, Big Persona was also produced by Tyler, the Creator. Everyone knows Tyler's an underrated producer. He doesn't produce all that often, but when he does, stands out. It's really funny, like that song, Big Persona, just this big beat, and then Tyler just flexing on everyone for the hook. And it kind of reminded me of his Hot 97 interview he did after Call Me If You Get Lost came out, where he's just basically bragging about all his accomplishments and telling all the haters to fuck off. And I was like, oh, you actually kind of distilled that into a guest feature. That sounds really awesome. But either way, like Tyler can match Maxo's energy in terms of being really brash and confident, and mean that beat. So I think that song's awesome.
Yeah, man. I actually feel like this whole run in the middle from Big Persona up and through the Freddie Gibbs song, What I Look Like, or the Freddie Gibbs guest verse, just really works for me the whole way through. There's a couple others after that I really liked as well, but I just thought that run was by far my favorite. What other tracks stood out to you, though?
Yeah, I like Local Joker, which is in that run there. Again, like there's kind of like a matter of factness with Maxo's lyricism that can often come across. Like he can get his message, across in I think a really economical way. Again, he doesn't have the most complicated flow, but he seems to still say a lot, which is cool. And I also really like Greener Knots, which is produced by Hit Boy. I think that beat kind of really picks it up towards the end.
Yeah, Greener Knots is one that stood out to me. I also thought Mama's Purse sounded pretty good. I think when I first was listening to him, I was a little bit like his like delivery or maybe his vocal performance throughout the album reminds me a little bit, and not necessarily because of anything other than the way that they deliver, but of 21, because he's very like monotone at times and just kind of like flat, but then it just really works for him. And like their voices are so different, and obviously like 21 has like a low but still kind of like high pitch at times, but he's just a total like baritone Maxo, and it's really just cool to like tune into him. And I also heard I forgot which track it was on. I think it was maybe the third one there. They say, where he drops like a Scooby-Doo line at one point, and I just was like, oh, he can like bring some funny lines at times too. So versatile, but also his own style for sure. Really appreciate
it's like a different spin on Griselda. If you find the Griselda guys appealing, that type of rap, that type of lyricism, Maxo's very much cut from the same cloth, but still has his own identity, that Houston spin, all that.
Yeah. Well, I think we enjoyed the Maxo. We're probably going to put a song of his on our Nowstalgia Best of 2021 on Spotify. Dave, is Kirk Knight going to get a song on there, though?
That's a different question, my friend. Kirk Knight, Kirk Neasy, did not expect this album to come out. I just been not on my radar, obviously pro eras. Kirk and I, we talked about the last album, It Is What It Is, back in 2018. And obviously since then we talked about the Beast Coast album in 2019, of which he was a major part of. And then this comes out, third record. And he's changing up what he does. So I don't know. How did you feel about After Dark, the third Kirk Knight record?
I want to say don't remember a lot about It Is What It Is, except for the fact that we couldn't figure out what the acronym stood for, I believe.
That's right.
Yeah, so we were like,
someone got us in the comments for that.
yeah, shout out to that guy. Yeah, I didn't really enjoy this album that much. Yeah, just being like honest. I don't think it's necessarily bad. I think I just found it to be very like samey, and obviously it's a little more like sing-songy and like airy and light, which cool. I appreciate the swing, and like most artists who switch things up, like they should step outside their box, but it just did not bring the energy I guess I was hoping for. What about you?
Yeah, I think if the more you know about Kirk Knight, I guess it makes a little bit more sense. You know, back when It Is What It Is, actually my favorite song off that album, Downtime, which got the video. That is a much more melodic song performance from Kirk. Kirk, of course, came up as a teenager alongside his close friend Joey Badass. They came up as boom bap revivalists, classic hip hop indebted sound. Joey has moved away from that, or at least not doing it all the time, as we know. Kirk also doing the same thing. And I remember when they did the Beast Coast album press, they all kind of like making fun of Kirk, calling him R&B Kirk, and like he clearly has been going down this path for a few years now. Even think of the Coast Clear hook off the Beast Cult album. He's kind of singing it. His left hand verse, kind of melodic. But this new album, After Dark, I just think he took it way too far, you know? Because
Yeah.
I like him as a rapper, the Nick and Knight album with Nick Caution.
Yeah.
They paired great together. That shit was great. But this, like you said, it feels samey, but more importantly, it just doesn't sound special. And Kirk's kind of been like a secret weapon for Pro Air and Beast Coast as a a producer, as a writer. He produced ASAP Ferg's Plain Jane. A lot of people don't know that. He's a talented guy and is a big part of Joey's early success. But I think as a soloist, going down this path, maybe he can get there because he is quite a talented guy and has some versatility, which is being shown here. But I just think it was his identity is just kind of lost when he went this far down the R&B, melodic route.
Yeah. I think you really hit the nail on the head. And it's not only like the melodic route, but it's just like very like produced. And this album is very it sounds like he's kind of singing through like a cup of water at times or something like that. Like it just sounds like he's like a mile away on a lot of these tracks. And I just didn't really find it very engaging. And I think like you mentioned that sameness and that melodicness, but it just felt like boring at times. And like, man, I just did not expect to like go into this album with that. I mean, again, he's obviously trying something, so like expand that toolbox. But just hopefully this isn't the direction he's gonna go continuously from now on.
Yeah, and I'd say like if you listen to this, which is a short listen, there's some moments like I think "Treat You Better." That sounded like a more traditional Kirky song, so I can hold out hope that he'll maybe go back down that road. On the other side of things, like "Sunset," which is definitely an R&B track, that hook kind of like especially like the "I Just Want to Fuck Right Now" stuff, kind of giving me some like Trey Song vibes in terms of his his explicitness in his writing. And also the first track, "Take My Chance." I really liked how he pitched up his vocals on that hook. I did think that sounded good. But yeah, a lot of like his like sung verses in particular, I think you kind of lose interest quickly. But he definitely has like hook writing strengths. I think that's pretty clear, especially in his work with other people. So
Yeah.
it's a miss for sure for me. But actually, I think most interesting thing I noticed about this album was that if you look on Spotify, it's released under Blacksmith Recordings. Pro Era is nowhere to be seen. Didn't know that. Did Kirk leave Pro Era? Is just he has a separate deal now? What's that mean? I don't know, because CJ Fly and Nick Caution have released recently and they were still on PE. So we know Pro Era is still a label. I tweeted at Kirk, he didn't respond. So we'll find out one day.
Well, hopefully he gets back to. I agree. I think "Treat You Better" is probably the highlight for me as well. But why don't we move on to another artist who I think we like a little bit more than Kirk Knight. Do we? I don't know. I guess I like Young Thug more than
I
Kirk
certainly
Knight.
do.
Um, Young Thug dropping Punk. Um, an album that I think was fairly anticipated. I saw a lot of like people getting hyped for
Mhm.
it in the lead up this past week. Yeah, Thug has some some like big fans, which is funny because I never really think of him as like I don't know. I always think of him as like a sidekick kind of, which I think is just because I
Ah,
see him kind of hop onto these tracks, do these spots, and I feel like he usually levels up a lot of his guest spots and the songs that he's on. He
right.
brings his own vibe for sure. But I think for me, I never really was a huge fan of him only because I think when I listen to rap, I don't really listen to rap for the kind of rap that Young Thug makes. It is
Mm,
very melodic. Um, it's very specific vocal performance, and we get a lot of that on Punk. But I think there's some highs and some lows on this. I think it's good at times and very not good
mm.
at times. What about you?
Yeah, that's kind of been how I felt about Thug. He's someone who I think commands a lot of justly earned respect as a luminary of Atlanta rap for the past 9 years, 8 years or so.
Mm.
And remember when the Mount Rushmore thing on Twitter was going off a few months ago. A lot of people calling for Young Thug to have a spot over, say, someone like J. Cole. You know, Young Thug has a lot of fans. I think that is because he can do a lot of different things, album to
That's
album,
true.
mixtape to mixtape. You don't know where Young Thug is going next. Part of that, as you said, is a unique style of vocal performance to try and explain it in some way, you know. But
Mhm.
also he'll bounce around production, right? Like beautiful thugger girls. That's for the ladies, man. And
Mhm.
then Barter Six, that's for the dudes. Like he can give you some hard trap, he can give you some light R&B, he can do kind of both. And coming off of So Much Fun, which was technically his debut album back in 2019, even though he's got like a litany of projects at this point. So Much Fun is my favorite Thug album, Thug project. I
Mhm.
just thought that was kind of like the perfect distillation of like what Thug does as a performer. So I was hoping to get more of So Much Fun leading into Punk. And he didn't go in that direction, which is cool. And I guess shame on me for expecting Thug to do the same thing twice, you know? So I still respect it, but it's not my favorite Thug on Punk.
Yeah. Yeah, I think what the tracks that stood out most to me um probably were like Stressed. I really like Stress. I thought J. Cole and T
Mm,
Shine were
yep.
working well with Thug on that. Um I liked the song with Juice World, Rich Shit.
Yes. Yeah,
Thought
that
that
was
was
that
a
was a high
clear
quality
standout.
Juice feature for sure, posthumous feature.
Yeah, and I even like the next track, "Living It Up" with Post Malone and ASAP Rocky. It's more melodic and very like
Mm,
radio friendly,
very Post
especially
Malone.
yeah, very Post Malone. But I still liked like the bop to it. I think it starts getting a little bit. It loses me a little bit near the back half. Like a song like "Love You More." I get the like sweetness of it. I think like overall it's not necessarily a bad song, but just not a song that I want to really listen to.
Right. Nate
Especially on
Ruiz
like
from the
a young thug
Clouds. Where did that come from?
album. I did like him though. Following that up with "Hate the Game," like just followed that up immediately with a song that like pretty much undercuts the song right before it, or is like a
Right.
nice like I don't know yin and yang. So
Yeah.
appreciate that. But yeah, I think overall I left like with not as many standouts as I expected to. I guess maybe the Drake and Travis Scott track was memorable, but mostly for the switch up. I think the when Drake's verse comes on,
Right.
but
I,
I don't
I,
know.
I would say I don't even think the Drake feature is that great. I think it's kind of like a throwaway copy paste from Drizzy there,
Oh, so you
production
just
wise.
mean basically what we got on Certified Lover Boy? Or
Oh, bang, bang,
oh,
bang.
what
Yeah,
song stood out to you?
it's a good question. I guess Contagious is pretty good. You mentioned the Juice song. I liked Icy Hot with Doja. I thought Doja in particular just had a really nice performance there. I actually thought Gunna, for the most part, wasn't too bad on this. Obviously, I don't need 3 Gunna features,
You don't?
but you know, they're on the same label, so makes
Yeah,
sense that they be together. Um, Mac feature sounds really nice,
it does.
Um, that was cool. But I'm like, not to harken back to So Much Fun, but like I didn't hear a hot on here. I didn't hear a bad on here. I didn't hear London, in terms of a J. Cole in a Thug song,
Mhm.
Uh, for me, I just like the type of banger I like from Thug. I found more on there, and also if you think back to earlier Thug bangers, whether it's like Best Friend or Stoner or Danny Glover, like he's kind of like more has like more wild vocal performance on those
Mhm.
songs, from like 6 years ago and on. And on this, it seemed I don't know. I can't put my finger on it, I guess, but I was just a little disappointed with Thug himself on this, and
Mm.
he seems to be getting a lot of love for this, though, to be honest. So maybe it's just me.
Yeah, I think this is a hit or miss album for me. I do have to say, really love the cover art.
Yes.
Very cool, very like intricate. Appreciate someone that puts a lot of time into their cover art like that. Um,
Speaking to the cover, if you go look at So Much Fun's cover, once again, like the punk cover, zoom in and you see more detail. You see more uh, artistic thought, in terms of
mhm.
commissioning a real album cover. You gotta respect that from Thug, keeping that going in the age of the Certified Lover Boy and Donda covers.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think really our take is like, or what we're kind of saying is, there's some good stuff, but just not uh not consistent enough for
Yeah.
us to
I mean, he
listen to
just
good
got
albums.
better stuff, in my opinion. But that's the thing about Thug. He contains so many multitudes that to someone else, this is his best stuff. And he's
Right.
one of the few artists that can really, I think, have that kind of response where he makes all different kinds of things for all different kinds of people, I guess.
Yeah, and I guess after we just talked about an album that someone tried something and it really didn't work for us, respecting the ability to have quality versatility is no small feat. So,
Right.
shout out to Thug, shout out to Punk. Dave, do you feel like Finneas? I don't even know where I was gonna go. Do you feel like Finneas is as versatile as Young Thug? No, I don't
Well,
think so.
not as a performer. He's a talented
Yeah,
guy, though. That,
yeah,
that much is known as a multi instrumentalist and
Grammy award winning.
arranger of songs, writer,
Mhm.
co-writer of songs. We know he's a talented guy, but obviously his collaboration work with his more famous sister is a little more tried and true
Notable.
than his solo performance.
Yeah. So I mean, I think that's the thing I could just kept coming back to as I listened to Phineas's debut album, Optimistic. We've heard some tracks from him, here and
Optimist.
there. Optimist, sorry. Um, I just I feel like he does a lot of the same stuff Billy does, but just not as good. And I don't mean to like bag on him. Like he obviously is a very talented guy, like you said, but it's just really hard to listen to him and hear a lot of the stuff Billy does and just not be like, well, I just want to go listen to a Billie Eilish album right now,
Yeah.
you know?
Well,
So,
and I would even take it a step further. I feel like he gives his best stuff to Billy.
yeah,
You know,
that's probably true.
how much of this could just be leftovers? How much of this could he maybe have actually intended to at one point help write for Billy, and then it didn't make Happier Than Ever, so it ends up on the
Yeah.
Phineas album. I don't know. I'm sure not all of it, but maybe some of it, maybe some of the ideas, because he's got a lot of quote unquote ideas on this from a lyrical perspective, but I think as a songwriter, it's a lot more heavy handed than you'd expect for someone who has got a lot of just credit for his songwriting already, obviously for his work with Billy. So, I, on the other hand, I actually thought it sounded more interesting than a lot of Happier Than Ever.
Mm,
Obviously, the second Billy album, a little more mellow than I think most people expected. And there's some exceptions, of course. Oxytocin, Therefore I Am do not apply here. But for this Phineas album, I was like, oh, there's actually, some like really nice piano on this. And,
Oh yeah.
in general, he's a talented instrumentalist. And I believe he is the sole writer, producer, and instrumentalist on
Mhm.
all these songs but one. So there was a lot of intentionality still, So I kind of have two minds about this one.
Yeah, I agree with what you're saying about the quality of the songs in terms of like the sonics and the instrumentals and the arrangement of it all. I think he's incredibly talented with that, and the songs sound pretty good. Like I think I just did not really feel like there were any tracks that totally grabbed me on this. There's a few that stood out. I liked "The Kids Are All Dying." I think that's the second track.
Yeah, nice
Um,
piano there.
yeah, really enjoyed that one. I liked Medieval,
Yep.
which you know, we're gonna talk about a medieval movie in a little bit, but the clapping and the drums in that together, I thought
Mm,
really perked up the album a bit for me. Um, Around My Neck was another track
yep.
that stood out to me. Seems like we liked a lot of the same ones, huh?
Yeah, it's actually funny to think too, because on Medieval, he seems to be kind of, theorizing about internet celebrity and how that culture waxes and wanes, and you get shoot out and spit out and all that. And yet, I don't know if he's actually ends up saying anything super profound on that song. Like, I get what you're talking about, but it's
Mhm.
almost a little too basic lyrically. Same thing with the '90s,
Oh yeah, I
which
felt like that was a miss
just
for
kind
me.
of a bland nostalgia thing from a lyrical standpoint, but also doesn't sound too bad in terms of like the actual performance and the
Mhm.
production. So but as you say, it's kind of hard to separate it because we have a higher lyrical standard already established because of his work with his sister.
Mhm. Like, so "Around My Neck" I think is one of the best examples of a song that sounds like it probably is a B-side from a Billy album that just like they're like, "Ah, we just don't need that for this because it's that like groove, the da da da
Yes.
da 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 is like a very Billy, almost like trademark, I feel like, in a
Yeah, the
sense, and
first
really
album.
stood out. And then I think even like the first one, like Concert 6 months from now, feels like a leftover from Happier Than Ever. It's like that guitar, like kind of
Mm,
simplified sound that I get what they're going for, and like that heartbreak, album song, but just not really something that stood out to me. But I did want to say the last track, How It Ends, I
yep.
thought was a nice way to wrap the album up.
I like the groove on that one.
Yeah. I like the clapping with it, and just you see why them together as a pair makes a lot of sense, because I feel like Billy brings a bit more of a star and vocal performance that Finneas just doesn't have at this point, but he's
Right.
obviously super talented in the production and arrangement side. So sometimes duos are a good thing. So
Yeah. And, I wouldn't rule out him becoming, improving down the line as a
oh,
soloist
absolutely
either,
not.
given the talent. So we'll stay tuned. No question about that.
Absolutely. And we'll probably throw one of his tracks onto our Nostalgia Best of 2021, as well as our guys, Coldplay, Dave. One of your favorite rock groups of all time, if I understand. Uh, Dave, give me your quick, just like general Coldplay take.
I just want something just like this. Uh, no, I've never been a huge Coldplay guy in terms of modern bands. Like I've gravitated to other acts. That's all. Um, I like some of the hits, like "Viva La Vida," for example. I remember that
Ah,
coming out at a you know notable time during high school. I don't even think I really knew who Coldplay was until that whole album cycle happened. To be honest, I didn't know about the early stuff as a kid. Um,
yeah.
yeah, and then like now I just see them as a legacy act, and we talked about that a
Oh,
lot with the last album, their eighth album that came out in November 2019.
everyday
And
life.
right, and it's funny to reflect on that album after the album we just got, Music of the Spheres, album 9.
Yep. Yeah, it's funny because the evolution of Coldplay, they've always kind of been this band that fluctuates back and forth, and this is like the most extreme example we can have, especially this like album run of A Head Full of Dreams to Everyday Life to Music of the Spheres, and not including the live album in between there, going from a huge anthemic, pop rock album to a stripped down acoustic guitar driven album back to Music of the Spheres, which is right back on the horse, and we're flying high through the galaxy, baby, on these pop rock EDM fucked songs, dude.
Yeah.
I
And
like it more.
and that's what's funny too, because I literally watched a review of Everyday Life, and I was like, I respect the desire to go down the stripped down route and not just capitulate to homogeneous pop as you see your commercial viability waning as your band gets into their third decade and it's like 22nd decade. Well, it turns out that's exactly what they did on the next album, because the stripped down album is their least successful album commercially. It's like, oh wow,
Yeah.
who could have seen this coming?
Yeah, man. And they really go for it on this. And you know what? I I really liked a couple of the tracks on this. I have to say, like, I don't think there's
Stand
anything
by
here
it,
that's
man.
there's not
It's
anything
pop,
here
man.
that's
There's nothing
like,
wrong with good pop.
yeah, and there's nothing here that's like top tier Coldplay. Like, there's nothing here that's like Yellow or The Scientist or anything like that. But I do think like Higher Power and Humankind are like decent pop rock Coldplay songs. I think Higher Power, especially like near the ending, just finishes up really strong. Like, really finds a nice groove in the second half. It's got that 80s vibe that pretty much every like pop rock band has to infuse into its albums at this point. But I think they do it pretty well. Did you like that track?
Yeah, sure. Max Martin is like the chief creative officer of this album. The man
The
behind
COO.
the man behind Melodic Math. It's a decent fit. Like you said, I think sonically you can understand the intent in terms of just making pop. I would hardly call a lot of this pop rock, to be honest. I would just say it's more or less
Straight pop.
mainstream pop these days.
Yeah.
Actually, People of the Pride, that song stood out to me because there's actually like big guitar and drums on that, which is so unlike most of the rest of the album. But I guess Martin found a way. It's like we want to make a pop record. What should we do? What's to our strengths? And he managed to figure it out, I guess.
Yeah.
I mean, there's one song that stood out to me because I think it's actually legitimately really good, and that song just went number one. Coldplay's second song ever to do this, first since Viva La Vida, and that would of course be My Universe with BTS.
Yeah. I mean, that's the clear standout on here. It also sounds like it starts off with a live performance, which
Yeah,
I don't know if that's actually true or they just pumped the
I think
crowd
it's a sample.
noise in. But yeah, I think it really stands out. And obviously, if you get BTS on a track, it's most likely going to go number one. But I still think the song's pretty good.
Yeah, I mean, no one would call late period Coldplay like lyrical masterminds. It's never been a strength of Chris Martin, even if you asked him. But in the case of My Universe, taking most of the songwriting and vocal performance out of Chris Martin's hands and just letting him basically do I want something just like this all over again.
Yeah.
On the chorus, it works because I think you get a really tremendous BTS feature. Jungkook on the pre-chorus, Jimin in that second verse, and then Suga on the next pre-chorus. I thought all those guys sounded tremendous.
Yeah, man.
And I think it's a really lovely pop song. And they did a really nice job with the video, I think, too, in terms of having all the BTS guys look like holograms because they were not obviously in the same location making this video. But they did a really, really cool job with that. And also fits kind of the aesthetic of this universe, this music of the spheres, these emoji songs, all that. But yeah, I think My Universe is legitimately a really good track.
Yeah, I think My Universe is good. Going back, Humankind, I really like the ending, like the last minute. There's really like some strong like guitar and rock elements in there. And I also really respect Coloratura, which 10-minute track, but like they go for it and there's like piano breaks and like guitar riffs in there and some like nice chanting, and I'm like, hey, they like took a swing at the end of this album. It's obviously not going to get them a lot of commercial success, but it seems a lot more like they're building out these like live, huge anthemic performances, which is pretty cool. Um, you do have to kind of wade through some crap, in my opinion. Let Somebody Go with Selena, I thought was just not very good at all.
Mm.
Beautiful, I don't know, didn't totally work for me. Um, and the heart song, I think it is. I also didn't really like. That's the other thing. Just like the emoji tracks, I'm like, what are we doing here? I don't know.
These guys are in their mid-40s. Like, come
Yeah,
on now.
like what is going on?
It's just like gimmicky, you know. It's
Yeah,
not like it's creative or
but it's
funny or
gimmicky.
anything. It's just weird.
It's gimmicky for who? Like a teenager, like a 13-year-old?
Yeah, I don't think
Like
they're impressed by this either because they're not
they're not
listening to
even
this
listening to
except for the
this. Yeah,
BTS song.
exactly. They're like, oh, well, here's the BTS song. Now I can close this album and never open it again. Put it on a playlist. So yeah, I don't know who that's for, but you know, this album I expected much worse. So overall, I'm pleased with this Coldplay performance. I'm sure we'll see them doing a lot of festivals next year. So shout out to Coldplay. They're also great live. So if you can catch them live, I really recommend it. So
Finding a way to stand out one way or another when you're on your 9th album,
yeah.
deserves some credit at the very least.
Well, again, Nostalgia Best of 2021 on Spotify. But Dave, finally, Succession is back. And really funny note to start with. Friend of the pod, Sean McKenna, OG guest of the pod. Funny
That's
to think
right.
about.
That's right.
It's Game of Thrones deep dive.
2016. Audio only, baby.
He texted me today. He said, "Hey, do you like Succession?" I said, "Yeah, I love Succession." And he's like, "I've never."
Sounds like you're not subscribed at youtube.com/nostalgiapod.
Oh, he's definitely subscribed, but obviously just not watching our Succession breakouts. Which, if you want to, go back and check those out. But he asked me, he's like, "What season are they on?" I said, "Oh, it's season 3. Just started last night." He's like, "I could have sworn it was like season 5. I feel like I've just been hearing about it so much for so long."
Right.
And I was like, "Well, the break of COVID last year and not being able to release season 3, getting having this extended I don't know, amplification, this extended hype for it has kind of made it exist in the consciousness, I think, a lot longer. And also, it's just a sensation, just the sort of thing where like Sean, who is obviously not watching the show, is just getting a lot of content about Succession because the show fucking rules, dude. It's probably the best show on HBO right now, which is saying a lot.
Yeah, no, I would say it's the best show currently on TV.
Mm.
I mean, I believe the last season 2, 2019, end of 2019, that didn't make my number one show of the year, but that was only because Fleabag season 2 and Watchmen also happened in 2019. It was a completely stacked, top 3 there.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe 2018 Succession was my number one show, I believe. Unless Atlanta came out the same year. I don't remember. But yeah, I mean, the hype is clearly real. You can see all the content, sites and creators are making about it. And it seems to be working because this season 3 premiere set new ratings records for them already. I believe season 2 was getting like 5 million viewers, once you count all the various metrics. So I would like to see exactly how far season 3 can go because it's not Succession has never been as popular as say like Big Little Lies or The Outsider or The Undoing. HBO has had bigger hits recently than Succession, but I think we all know because of how good it is, it's already getting a lot of Emmy attention. It should get there and become one of their, if not their most popular show until like House of the Dragon comes out.
Yeah, I completely agree, and I think probably one of the best signs for this show and just its growth over time, because I think a lot of people had the same reaction in the first season, where the first couple episodes, it's really hard to root for these people. And Alan Sepinwall, who's a TV critic that we like a lot, has come around himself on this show and likes it. So even the people who didn't like it the first couple of seasons just say it's undeniable at this point. And season 3 kicked off last night, as we mentioned. Kendall versus Logan. Episode 1 titled Secession, which I thought was pretty clever. Dave, did you like the premiere of season 3?
Oh, of course, because that's the thing about Succession. The show only knows how to throw 99 miles an hour. There is no other speed. It's so good. And Jesse Armstrong, the creative force behind the show, he's just so in sync with what he wants from these characters, what he wants from these storylines. There's never any dead weight. And season 3 picks off immediately where season 2 ended, which is obviously a great choice, you know? And the momentum is still there. But just in general, like all these characters continue to act how you expect them to act. There's like never any like confusion or leaps of logic. And it's always just so riveting and so dramatic. And this just kept it going.
Yeah, and this just the setup and the storytelling at this point, with this season basically kicking off with, like I said, the Kendall versus Logan, like duel, so to speak, where Kendall just exposed all of the sexual harassment and sexual assault cover-ups from the Royco company,
Right.
pinning it all on his dad, saying he knew everything that was going on. They paid people to cover it up. And now he's trying to make a play for whatever is next, whether he's trying to take over the company, see where things go. But having everybody else in the middle, Shiv seems to be teetering, and you see that throughout the episode. Which side is she going to fall on? Jerry gets named as the successor to Logan at the end of the episode, which I actually think is an interesting choice. And um, you know, Jerry, for as much as she's been a loyal soldier, does not seem the type of person that will just take that role lightly, and just be a puppet for Logan. So very interested to see how that plays out. Um, Obviously, you bring in all of the Kendall, like just being a piece of shit. Like his girlfriend comes into his ex-wife's house where he's like setting up his, like, I don't
Yeah.
know,
His war
battle
room.
ranks.
Yeah.
Ridiculous, just crazy stuff. But there's so much good stuff. Obviously, Kieran Culkin is Roman. I feel like he's a little shit the whole time, but like you see his like insecurities just come out.
Yeah.
Everybody is just on their A game right off the bat.
Yeah. And the characterization goes so deep at this point too. Watching how Logan, you know, methodically determining who will and also who won't be the interim CEO in his stead. I mean, it just makes so much sense, right? But like you
Yeah.
said, that ruthlessness might have turned some people off in the beginning. Obviously, it's well known that the Roy family is a stand-in for the Murdochs, and ATN is a stand-in for Fox. It's kind of you kind of have to not have a pulse, I think, to not understand that at this point. But the drama and the performances and the writing is so great. It just really is tremendous. And that Shiv 180 at the end after feeling slighted once again, assumingly going towards Kendall. On the other hand, it's really cool that you never really can predict anything about the show because there's so much backstabbing. There's so much, 180s from the characters. And just in general, when they talk to each other, they often don't say what they mean or can barely say anything for fear of saying something they don't mean or letting someone know what they really think. The mind games and the levels to the mind games. So awesome. And obviously, I think comedically, that's often played a great effect with Cousin Greg and Tom. But I mean, the ensemble is really rich at this point. J. Smith Cameron has really become a big part of the show too. Kind of expanded beyond the immediate family at this point.
Yeah. Obviously you get some good Cousin Greg moments in like right off the bat. Hey, if you're okay in there, let me know, or we're gonna have to break the door down. I don't know if I can actually do that, but
overall, the internet's positive, but the negative ones, that they do have a way of standing out, or however he says it. I mean,
yeah. Also,
Nick Braun just knows the exact tenor to play the character.
Yeah, and just excellent. You also get the phone call where Kendall and Logan are talking through the woman who answers Kendall's phone. I think it's like his lawyer or some like assistant or something like that. Just really funny moment. Yeah, man. I'm just so excited for this season, and it's just really nice to have a Succession back in our life. It feels like somewhat of a return to normalcy amid obviously absolutely unnormal times.
Right.
And I just think back to the end of season 2 and just how like cinematically beautiful that finale was, and just how like perfect of an episode of like television it really was. And I'm sure we're going to be getting a lot more of that sort of stuff in this season. So
Yeah, totally.
very excited for this.
Really happy that they are not doing COVID in any way in this story. They're just sticking to their actual story. Great choice. And like last year we had Danny Houston, Holly Hunter show up. This year we're getting Alexander Skarsgård and Adrian Brody joining the show in some capacity. Just really exciting stuff.
Yeah, when you make a show that's good, people want to be a part of it. So, it's funny because what we're saying is Succession still great. So if you haven't watched Sean McKenna, tune in, catch up. But Dave, was The Last Duel as great as Succession? Maybe not as great as Succession.
That's a high bar, but I think The Last Duel is great, and it's a big shame that older people are not going to see this movie in the theaters because it had a very poor box office performance, which is unfortunate.
I was gonna say we might think it's great, but we are like 2 of like 100 people who seem to go this weekend because only made what 4.8 million,
correct,
domestically
on a big budget. Obviously, this is a Fox inheritance for Disney, and this movie had a lot of hype behind it, a lot of pedigree, which goes without saying. Ben Affleck, Matt Damon reuniting once again to write a film, bringing Nicole Holofcener in on top of that, another world-class creator at this point who's just coming off a screenplay Oscar nomination at that for Can't You Ever Forgive Me. Having Adam Driver join the cast, having Affleck take a different part in as a result, Ridley Scott continuing to work, and all the ingredients that you expect from like big adult dramas, and star vehicles and all that. And I think one of the lessons people have been talking about for the past few months is that older audiences are the most reluctant to return to the box office. You saw that with Bond doing well, but not as well as, say, Venom, which is being driven by younger audiences. In the case of Last Duel, the audience is extremely dependent on older people, and they're just not going at this time. And maybe it's a marketing problem as well. Who's to say? But unfortunately, the movie did not latch on, which I think is a shame because I think the movie's really good.
Yeah, it's definitely my top 10 movies for this year. I don't know if that's saying a lot or not. A lot of the most anticipated ones are still to come, but I don't think it's been a bad year for movies by any stretch. And so for it to be top 10, I think is really good. I really appreciate a lot about this film. I think there were some things that I wish were a little bit different. I feel like this also could have been like 20 minutes shorter than it was. But that you can say that for a lot of movies, and it's also Ridley Scott, so let him vamp, let him do what he's got to do.
Yeah.
Movie looks great. Let's start with that. Like it looks very much of that period.
1300s France.
Yeah, I think 1400s even, but
yeah, I think it starts in 1386, something like that.
Yeah, something around that period.
Pre-Crusades, medieval Europe.
Yeah. And I think the storytelling mechanism of the chapters, right? The first chapter where it's from it's not Jacques, it's Jean Carew, who's played by Damon, and the second chapter is from the perspective of Jacques Lagree, who's played by Adam Driver, and then the last one is from Jodie Comer's Marguerite. And also just kind of like the stylistic choices that come along with that are really interesting, and it's an interesting way to tell a story. You do relive a lot of moments and that feel like they could be, yada yada a bit, but that's okay. And then, man, great climax this movie. I feel like there's a lot of like intensity built into all these scenes. I think it just has left me with a lot of thoughts as to like why certain characters were the ones who got put in certain positions, or like why Jean went first in the storytelling as opposed to someone else.
Oh, I know. I think that was clearly the correct choice, though.
I think so too. But it's funny because like even like Comer, Marguerite in the first telling is so like more like stripped down and like intentionally, I think, like stand out, and then as it goes through she just becomes like a shining light throughout the film.
Yeah.
And I think it's really well done, and Comer I think is obviously the one who grows the most in the movie as her perspective is more and more fleshed out, and that seems to be one of the themes that the movie tries to get
Of
to.
course.
But yeah, you just end up really disliking pretty much everybody except for her, right?
Yeah. But that was what surprised me the most about the film was the organization of the script, as you said. You know, a movie like this, medieval setting, climaxing in a epic duel, 1v1. This could have just been mainly that, but it's not actually that because it's thematically interested in so many, I think richer things. And starting with Damon, starting with Garu, and seeing how his perspective of himself is a lot different from reality, right? Like he starts off as like, a noble man, really indebted to the church, to the crown, sees himself as good, and he sees himself as a just person and a loving husband as well, right? And watching that progress as we get the other perspectives coming in, starting with Legree, he's like, oh wait, no, this guy's actually kind of prickly. He's
Mhm.
kind of vain and pedantic about titles and things like that. And people just don't seem to like him at court. He's just kind of a dick, not that cool. And then again, third time, when you see Comer's perspective, oh wait, no, this guy actually is also really cold to his wife and not actually like a good man in that
Right.
regard either. I just love the way they break Damon down, and credit to Damon for really uglying himself up and being a really
Oh yeah.
unlikable character. Obviously it starts off with like that scar, which just makes
Mhm.
him, not as handsome, but the
And that
way they,
stupid hair.
yeah,
Sorry.
yeah, oh, totally. And the way they break him down, I loved it,
Mhm.
but act, and like I love the way it starts it off with Act Two, and it's like, you get a Legree's perspective, driver's perspective. It's like, oh, I see what this movie's doing now. Wow, interesting.
Mhm.
And this obviously leads itself to, you know, great moments of levity from Ben Affleck's Pierre, the local lord,
Yeah.
who just complete camp performance. It's tremendous, so
Affleck
funny,
destroys this movie, dude. Just
so
absolutely.
so crazy.
He chews on every single scene as many times as possible.
Yeah, amazing,
Incredible.
right? And then you got something that might be a little more controversial, right? Is because you see the assault happen from
Mhm.
Legree's perspective. She don't protest too much. To him, it was supposed to happen. Blah blah blah.
She
Always
had
all
to. She's a lady. She had to scoff my advances.
right. And then you see it again. You get a lot of other good things with the truth performance, the Comer, sorry, not performance, POV. A lot of other things with that, but then you get that rape scene a second time, and you
Mhm.
see it in an even more heinous fashion, and the real fashion, which obviously makes sense given that it's sexual assault. I think for some people, seeing a sexual assault twice on screen probably not something they're super jazzed to do, but I do think the movie kind of hits home thematically what it's going for, especially when you get to the trial stuff
Mhm.
and how at every turn the church and the prosecution and yada yada, everyone's trying to poke holes in her story. But even like deeper than that, right? It's like uh Karu, Damon, he's only concerned about the assault in terms of how it affects him, and how Legree is like stabbing him in the back once again by raping my wife. He's like never actually concerned with the well-being of his wife, and you don't actually get that like final like nail in his like character until you're
Can
like
this
2 hours
man
into the
only do
movie.
evil to me? Can this
Right.
man only do evil to me? And what was it that the priest said, that rape is not actually a woman's concern? It's a man's property, like
Right. Yeah.
concern. Just really awful and hideous stuff.
Yeah. And then after all that, all these revelations and new piece of information learned about our characters, then you actually get the duel, and the duel is still really epic, and
Mhm.
Damon's lording over Driver like he's fucking Oberyn from Game of Thrones yelling "confess,"
Mm.
great vibes.
I
So
mean, and that final like dagger through the head, dude. Like
visceral.
Jesus Christ. But I think like you make a really good point about the like growth of the characters in this, because really, I think the most meaningful interaction or conversation that happens in the whole movie is between uh Haru's mom and Marguerite, when she says
Yes.
like, "Who are you to like do this?" And like, potentially my son's gonna die now. And she's like, "Well, this happened to me. This was awful." And she's like, "Well, it happened to me too." And I just
Right.
went on with it because that's just what people do during this time, pretty much. And then Marguerite later on, before they have to go to the duel, is saying, "I would have made the same choice if I had had this child before." Um, before
Right.
I brought all these allegations on her before I knew what was happening. And it's just really like obviously heartbreaking, but like I think just hammers home the like absurdity of this time and just the misogynistic atmosphere that just hovered over everything. It's just
Hmm.
awful. But I think it really drives home that like this was a very brave thing, and like these men are the ones who are lauded and known in the story, but really the only one that did anything truly brave was Marguerite.
Right. And I've seen that kind of you said as a criticism as well. Is at the end, the movie ends with an epic conflict between the two men, and at
Mhm,
the end, Garou's still raising his fist, all hyped that he fucking killed Legree. You know,
mhm. Meanwhile, he's like
and
bleeding out of his dick, basically, but
oh god, yeah,
whatever.
and yeah, man, like I mean,
But
so it might be a little on the nose to some, but like when they go after her at the trial, oh, you said Legree was handsome, as if
mhm,
that has anything to do with you being raped, But like
yep,
that's the line of thinking that you still often will see today when it
mhm,
comes to that. It's like, oh, she was asking for her. What was she wearing? We've heard this before, unfortunately,
yep,
and that's why I really love the movie because it has everything from a period level done at a really high level, obviously in terms of production values, the
yeah,
action, even the early action when you're seeing Damon in Scotland or his local campaign with Driver. The sword and sandals fighting stuff is fun, but thematically, it just goes in a place I didn't expect. In terms of like late period Ridley Scott, you know, he hasn't, I don't think, made a movie this involved in quite some time, and he still made a lot of great movies in later in life. Look no further than The Martian with Damon, but
mhm,
I was quite impressed, and
yeah.
I just didn't really see it coming.
Yeah, just to circle back to your point about where the movie ends, it does. The actual final scene is Marguerite with her child in a field, and
Right.
just them, no one else, which I think is great. And then you get the title cards that Karu is goes on the Crusades and dies, and
Right.
which is just really really funny, like
Yeah,
such a
yeah.
poetic ending.
My theater kind of laughed. I saw it earlier screening, so it was fuller than I'm sure most people's theaters, and then everyone kind of chuckled. It's like, yeah, fucking, of course he died in the
Yeah,
Crusades.
of course. And then Marguerite goes on to run her estate by herself for 30 years and never remarry. So shout out to her.
Yep.
Yeah, and I just want to say like Jodie Comer, um, really having a hell of a year on the big screen. I haven't seen Free Guy, but like pretty much everything I saw
It's
about
good
it
in
is
it.
that she just slayed it, and then to get the star turn that she does in this, and I was really worried because, like you said, from Korea's perspective, it's all about him and not very much about her, other than that this thing happens and it drives him forward to do stuff.
Right.
And then she comes out more and more as each story gets told, and it's just really wonderful to see her break out in the end. I thought she was fantastic. So
Yeah. And I mean, you mentioned her scenes with Karu's mom, the mom played by Harry Walter. Of course, Comer and Walter have a lot of chemistry from Killing Eve,
mhm.
and Comer seems to have left a good impression on Ridley Scott because she was recently cast in the movie he's about to make next, Kit Bag, which is a movie about Napoleon Bonaparte starring Joaquin Phoenix, making that
Mm,
next year. But of course, we're getting another Ridley Scott movie in between these two because House of Gucci is coming out in a month. Because
hell
Ridley Scott,
yeah.
despite being 83 years old, is just a goddamn legend. and you love to see it. But yeah, to your point, Jodie Comer, I think the name is getting out there. People know now, and obviously it was abundantly clear from Killing Eve season 1 that she was a tremendous talent, but she's also getting the parts, and that's awesome.
Yep. Also want to shout out Alex Lothar.
Yes.
Who plays, I think, a great King Charles, a king who is known for his like mental illness and psychotic episodes. So I just thought he stood out every time that they showed him on screen.
Really
it was
fun.
Great.
And once again, shout out Affleck, man. Really, honestly awesome.
Affleck in that wig and the blonde wig and that goatee and just being a total fuck boy is like just great stuff. So, oh man, we should wrap up there. But Dave, we got a lot more movies to get to next week, right?
That's right. 2 huge ones: Dune, Warner Brothers, HBO Max, Denis Villeneuve, and then everyone we stan: Timothée Chalamet, Zendaya, Oscar Isaac, etc., etc. Much hyped film, finally here. Not seeing it on HBO Max because I'm a real one, going to the theater. Anyway, French Dispatch also coming out. Wes Anderson, gotta go to the theater regardless to see that. No choice. Also starring Timothée Chalamet, among others. Very fun. Insecure, the final season, is coming on HBO. Insecure Succession, Sunday nights from here on out. Very exciting. And then musically, Parquet Courts, a band that we liked quite a bit a few years ago, coming back. And then allegedly, Lana Del Rey's second album of the year, Blue Banisters, is coming out. So
I'll believe it when I see it.
We'll see about that, but who knows?
So yeah, big stuff next week. Tune in for 40 minutes of Dune talk, no doubt. Hit that subscribe on youtube.com/nostalgiapod, soundcloud.com/nostalgiapod, @nostalgiapod on Twitter, and Nostalgia Best of 2021 on Spotify. Catch you next week.